What stop? It's like
well,
in
he lives in Minneapolis.
And also you played, right, in Green
Minneapolis
Bay.
and Green Bay.
You know what 20s is. It's not quite.
It's gorgeous outside America.
It is. Gorgeous if you were bundled up. Nanuka the North. All right, let's start the show. Hey, leave it to Jerry Jones to interrupt all the NFL playoff previews with a preview of what's to come in Dallas. That's where we kick things off this morning. Mike McCarthy introduced as the 9th head coach of the Dallas Cowboys yesterday. It's a nice smile from him. The last time McCarthy was on the big stage in Arlington, Texas, he was hoisting a Lombardi trophy for the Packers. I was there covering that. Now McCarthy taking over for a Cowboys team that hasn't won a Super Bowl in 25 years. So there is no doubt that when it comes to coaching in Dallas, for a guy like Jerry Jones, the expectations are high.
I'm just going to say this and to the fans, and, you know, the commitment will be unwavering, but you know, I won my first Super Bowl here in North Texas at AT&T Stadium. And I just want to tell you, I am anxious and excited to get to work on winning the next Super Bowl for the Dallas Cowboys.
I like it. Expectations are high for Mike McCarthy. Nick, you expect McCarthy's Cowboys to be Super Bowl contenders next season with the roster that you saw him have this season?
No, I don't. They won't have the same roster next season because they're going to pay Dak and they're going to have to pare away at least some pieces of that roster. The Cowboys are wildly popular. They're polarizing. They're at times controversial. What they are not or have not been the last quarter century is contenders. Twice since they won a Super Bowl in '94, they have been legitimate Super Bowl contenders. 2007, the year after Bill Parcells left, first year with Wade Phillips, they were 13-3, only to be upset at home in their very first playoff game by Eli Manning and the New York Giants. And then 2014, another game Mike McCarthy's intimately familiar with, or another season he's familiar with, the final game of the year, when they were 12-4, actually won a first-round playoff game, and then Dez caught it, Dez didn't catch it, and that ended their year there. Some would argue I should include 2016 in that list because they were 13-3, but a rookie quarterback was not going to go and win that Super Bowl. There were 2 years they have been true contenders, 07 and 14, and I do not think they are, even with the upgraded coaching, built the way in 2020 now a Super Bowl contender needs to be built. And by that I mean this. Of your guys under contract for 2020, 4 of your biggest cap hits are offensive linemen. You're trying to build a big, bruising football team, and one of your other biggest cap hits is your running back. That is against the grain for the way football is played these days. And you've got to be efficient with your roster spending. And I look at DeMarcus Lawrence, and I say, is he worth the money they're paying him? He wasn't this year. I don't think he would be next year. I look at Zeke, highest paid running back in the NFL. This year, probably about the 5th best running back in the NFL. And I look at the contract they are going to give Dak Prescott, and Mike McCarthy already was speaking glowingly about Dak Prescott, and I say, you're going to be paying the 10th or 11th or 12th best quarterback in football, top 3 quarterback money. To overcome that type of misspending, you have to have so much underpaid talent. I don't see that on the Cowboys roster. I also see an NFC where San Francisco's not going anywhere, Seattle's not going anywhere, Minnesota seems to be on the come rather than fading, and Green Bay continues lurking as well. So no, Greg, I don't find them to be Super Bowl contenders. I didn't even mention Philly there. I think they are contenders with Philly for the division, but that's the top end of the spectrum for them.
Yeah, I don't think that they'll be Super Bowl contenders next season, and for all the reasons you mentioned. But for me, it's not even so much the way they're configured in-house. It's the teams outside of that, not only the division, but in that conference that are ready and are so close themselves that I think the Cowboys have such a longer road to mow than most. And when it starts, when you establish a quarterback, and he has been established as your guy, and he is not under contract, that right there is problematic. Why? Because you have, as you mentioned, so many other guys who have already been paid. So the guy who is the most important as we look at this league on your team is the one that's not under contract. He's the one that's still grinding. He's the one that's still driven the most because he doesn't have that contract. And so what does that afford everyone else? a level of complacency. I don't care what you say, how you say it. There are some guys that can get paid and can continue to play at a high level, and then there are some that you pay and that they don't. And I think the Dallas Cowboys, to your point, have paid so many guys already that they don't have that hunger. They don't have that desire to win a championship as someone who doesn't. And Dak is one that doesn't, and I think that's the problem there.
We will, over the course of the morning, talk about Mike McCarthy and what he did say about Dak Prescott. But one thing I thought interesting in that press conference, Mike McCarthy said, yes, I want to win titles, but just keep in mind, everyone, let's trust the process. So he knows that this is going to be a process. If you don't think they're Super Bowl contenders now, how far off are they, or is that going to depend on when they do, in fact, pay Dak?
Well, listen, I think they're going to pay Dak this offseason, and I didn't love that quote from McCarthy, because while I don't think they're Super Bowl contenders, he certainly should, and they are not the New York Giants hiring Joe Judge, the Washington with a second-year quarterback. They are not a team that, the way they have spent their money and the way Jerry Jones looks at it, that they should be far off. I think they're far off because I wouldn't have paid some of the guys they've paid. I wouldn't try to have the highest paid offensive line in the history of pro football. I think a bad offensive line can kill you, but I think once you get an above average offensive line, the rest of it in today's game, where you're not going to run the ball 35, 40 times, is kind of unnecessary spending. I wouldn't have given DeMarcus Lawrence the biggest contract in the history of the franchise. But Jerry Jones, the man who picked Mike McCarthy, also picked those players and paid those players. He obviously does not think this is a long process. He fired his adopted son, Jason Garrett, or let his contract expire, because they didn't get to the level he thinks they should get to, which is compete for a Super Bowl. So I don't know that I'm buying from McCarthy that this is supposed to be a long, drawn-out process. When a man who hires you who's closer to 80 than to 70 and is obsessed with winning the way Jerry Jones is, he expects the Cowboys next year to win 12 games, win the division, be in contention for a bye, and to make their first conference championship game at a minimum in a quarter century. I just don't see it happening, but I also didn't see the Cowboys making the playoffs this year. Jerry had them in the Super Bowl this year as well. That's the level of expectation from ownership.
I don't think they're far off. I really don't. And I think when Mike McCarthy was talking about the process, I think he was talking about a culmination of all things, considering contracts as well. And when you look at their contract situations, there are a lot of guys, once Dak Prescott gets paid, they're going to have to consider reconstructing their contract, their deals. And mind you, one of the reasons that Dak Prescott had so much success was because of a guy on the outside in the perimeter that is not, he doesn't have a contract either.
Correct.
Amari Cooper. So you got two of your premier guys on offense on the same side of the ball that are going to require a healthy amount of money, and some guys are going to be feeling a little sour about it.
You just look at the guys they've paid. 4 offensive linemen, a running back, an inside linebacker, and Jalen Smith. And I understand the offensive linemen obviously help the quarterback as well. But none of them are edge guys. None of them are pass-catching guys. None of them are guys that stop the opposing team's pass catcher. The only guy that impacts the passing game one way or another directly that they've paid is DeMarcus Lawrence. I think they paid him too much. They paid him like he's at the top of the league pass rusher when he's a very good but not great pass rusher. It just feels like this team has been built anachronistically, and I wonder how Mike McCarthy deals with that, especially because they're about to make Dak Prescott maybe the highest paid player in NFL history. How do you deal with that factor as well?
All right, lots to get to this morning. Take a break. Coming up, why aren't 6 Super Bowls enough for Tom Brady? That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel on Sirius XM. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jen Wolf. That is Nick Wright. This is Greg Jennings joining us this morning. It is cold here in New York City.
Good to see you.
What stuff? It's like
Well,
in
he
the
lives in Minneapolis.
And also you played, right? In Green
Minneapolis
Bay.
and Green Bay.
You know what 20s is. It's not quite.
It's gorgeous outside America.
It is.
Gorgeous if you were bundled up. Nanuka the North. All right, let's start the show. Hey, leave it to Jerry Jones to interrupt all the NFL playoff previews with a preview of